We are back. It's the Joe Hockessin Show presented by PrizePicks. Locks of the week, position by position. These are players that we have to have exposure to on DraftKings in NFL Week 3. Start with the quarterback position, Jake. And the guy that we're going to talk about is towards the top, Lamar Jackson, 7,700 in this spot. Tell us why you like him.
Yeah, but a discount. And it comes down to the matchup, the Colts. I mean, looking at a lot of matchups of this division, you mentioned the Titans' pass defense, but the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts defenses are two of the worst in the league, as we just saw last week. And you just saw how willing they are to. The big part about it is not stop anybody. I don't say willing to not stop anybody, but it is they struggle against the run. They actually kept Dameon Pierce a little bit in check, but I don't know if that's more of the offensive line for the Texans and Dameon Pierce than it is really their opponents, because if you look at week one, obviously more telling. I'm just looking for Lamar Jackson to open things up more now that he's comfortable. He's got Andrews back. You saw it was basically like week one was kind of like, what's going on? Zay Flowers, cool. Week two was kind of Mark Andrews back, cool, like whatever. And Lamar Jackson just doesn't still seem like 100% like I'm going to take off. And the biggest reason why I bring up the take off is because Justice Hill is dealing with that toe issue. So if you have a limited or not playing Justice Hill and Gus, we're going to get back to Lamar Jackson running this week, and that's what I'm looking for. And I was actually surprised to see him under 8K. So as soon as I saw 7 and then a number, I don't even care for 79. It's just under 8K. 7,700 for Lamar Jackson and the rushing upside of this one. And then of course I'll just pivot myself for you, Joe, because I know where you're going. One of the most popular games of the week, and for good reason. And I watched this be like 13-10, of course, but it is the Chargers and Vikings. And I've been on the Herbert train the first 2 weeks. I'm on the Kirk Cousins side of this. 44 attempts in both of the first 2 games. And they just made the trade. Don't really expect a lot from Cam Akers right out of the gate to be involved. And Alexander Madison's been underwhelming. But the thing that's helped is that Kirk Cousins just like, screw it. I'm just going to keep passing. I'm going to keep passing and keep passing. The Chargers really haven't done much to stop the top 2 options of most teams. I love some Justin Jefferson. And I think this is a great spot if you want to stack against it. But if you want to pay down, I think a lot of people might. I don't know. I want to see what the ownership is at quarterback. It's usually relatively flat. You know, you and I talk about that every single year. But I think that for the savings that you get for Kirk Cousins, like what's the big difference in this game between Kirk Cousins and Justin Herbert? It's basically none. Who has, as of right now, Kirk Cousins is a top 3 quarterback.
Yeah, I kind of think that this is a really good example of a player that will probably reach around like 12 to 15% in larger field, but in smaller field stuff, we might see him like 25% just to like get access to this game environment and kind of get that savings, like you mentioned. So I like that a lot. Since we're here, we do like a prize pick in this game as well. So we might as well talk about your boy, Jordan Addison, 49.5 receiving yards for this one. So tell us why you're on that.
It feels low, even though I have concerns about Jordan Addison. He's still behind, pretty significantly behind KJ Osborne in snaps and routes. But the thing is that doesn't always need to be a thing. Like a good example to tie this in, I'm not saying like Kendrick Bourne, yay, but like Kendrick Bourne's second week, last week, Devontae Parker came back and Kendrick Bourne fell way behind him in snaps and routes. That's important because we want people to be on the field, and we especially talk about with tight ends. But there's also something about being on the field, and when you're on there, there's a reason you're out there. And for what it's been for the Vikings so far is that if you told me, looking at their 2 games, who's the better wide receiver, it's Addison, no question, over KJ Osborne. And this prop for what the usage has been and what Jordan Addison is putting up, like I was kind of going through this game, and I actually, you know how I found this, Joe? I actually went to Justin Jefferson. I was like, I kind of want to hit the over on Justin Jefferson.
Dude, those are so
and then
tough
I was like,
for me to click.
I know, 102.5. And then I'm like, oh, wait. Jordan Addison's down in the 40s, and he's going to eclipse this with no problem. This just actually feels like I get PrizePicks thinking because the concern I have about Jordan Addison, but this is a very easy mark in this matchup for Addison to hit.
Yeah, I like it. I look at those ones too, like the Tyreek Hill overs, and unless it's like a complete onslaught prize pick entry, I try and stay away from those ones. What I've been kind of doing, not with Jefferson in particular, but with Tyreek, is I've just been taking his over for a touchdown just because he's had so much usage around the goal line for that Miami team. So then you don't have to worry as much about the yardage, but then hopefully he gets in there too. There's a lot of different ways you can get there with those. I'm curious though in this game, because we might as well stay at the wide receiver position here. Keenan Allen is on your list at 7,600. He's also at 75.5 on PrizePicks. The one that we took with Reeves was actually Mike Williams in this game, over 61.5 receiving yards. So let's talk through the passing options on the Chargers side, but specifically Keenan for fantasy.
Yeah, it comes down to, I mean, honestly, put some respect on the name at this point, Keenan Allen. Like, this kind of feels like it's, you know, people are making these lines, people are making these prices, they know football. And we just dealt with Keenan Allen last year, but it dealt with not 100% Keenan Allen and that hamstring. And then, of course, it's like at this point in Keenan Allen, is he falling off? And what he's shown is like 100% healthy Keenan Allen. It's not just, I think we talked about it week 1 when I brought up just Justin Herbert. It might have even been week 2. I basically talked about Keenan Allen all 3 weeks so far now.
Yeah,
check him
you were
in.
early on this one, which is really nice for sure. Because I don't think a lot of people have been like, I mean, it was very easy last week to click the Jamar Chase, the Stephon Diggs, but like, moving down to like the Keenan Allen range in the 7K is like worked out for you and a lot of people that watch this show.
Until he gets to 8K. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of factors here. What I was going to say that I don't remember if it was the first or the second week, but I brought up the Kellen Moore situation. And it wasn't just Kellen Moore coming in here and like opening up the offense and throwing downfield, because that it's increased. Actually, Justin Herbert's ADOT, everything, it's deeper and it's better than it was. But it's not like what people are like, oh my God, it's going to be like the biggest deep ball passer in the league. But the biggest thing that kind of got overlooked is that Kellen Moore, is moving around Keenan Allen. Like, he's not just playing the slot anymore. Like, as a complete different conversation. Is like last year we talked about Joshua Palmer stepping in when there was injuries and stuff like that. And it was very much like if Joshua Palmer is playing, it's 1 for 1. DeAndre Carter 1 for 1, but it was 1 for Mike Williams and 1 for Keenan Allen because of the slot usage. Well, Keenan Allen's now playing everywhere. Keenan Allen has one of the best matchups going against this Vikings defense in the shootout that we hope. And if you told us anybody else, I always like to strip away the name and just look at the production, the over/under, the potential, all of it, and just say, all right, now put a name on the jersey and you mentioned Jamar Chase, put Chase on the back of his jersey. Mm-hmm. And people would be like slam dunk. It should be 8,500, and that's why I'm all over Keenan Allen in this one.
Okay, so if I was to force you to take an over on Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, we got 61.5 for Big Mike. Keenan Allen is 75.5. All right, let's lock it in.
Well, mostly because Mike Williams, like if you talk about change.
Well, I think Mike Williams would be really popular, which is why I think this is an interesting conversation to have too.
Yes, but I was going to also say, if you tell me Mike Williams plays all 60 minutes. Then I'd feel better about it. Like, we have to acknowledge the fact that Mike Williams is probably banged up at some point in the game.
Yeah, fair enough. We're splitting hairs. I think both these guys are great plays. So let's move on to a guy that's like a little bit cheaper on the wide receiver side of things, and it's Josh Reynolds, 4,200. Again, you have a little bit of a cold from all this Goff stuff that you've been playing, but it is interesting to see this guy still getting a ton of work at 4,200. That's a nice price.
Well, I love that you brought up Jared Goff, because I'm going to bring up the exact same thing I brought up last week with him. So the difference is 21.5 points or ish at home, 11.5 on the road last year. This is the biggest one. I said this again, 7.7 touchdown interception ratio at home, 1.5 on the road. Let's check into this year. And I know that the Chiefs are a better defense than people expected, but still on the road in week 1, 253, 1 touchdown, 14 points. Last week, 323, 3 touchdowns, 23 something points. Mm-hmm. The big thing about Josh Reynolds is until Jameson Williams comes back, he's the number 2. He's got a 22% target share, that not team target share, so target share on the routes that he runs. So when he runs a route, he's getting targeted 22% of the time. You know who that checks in with? Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, Devonta Smith, and names like that. The name this is another one. Put some respect on the name. Josh Reynolds at 42. I do Josh Reynolds at 52. This is absurd. Lock him in. This is lock of the locks of my locks of the week.
All right, the official tools partner of the show this year is fantasylife.com. So looking at the red zone rushing tool that they have here brings us right to one of Jake's picks of the week. We got Tony Pollard. He's 8K. Tony Pollard has 16 rush attempts in the red zone. He has 12 rush attempts inside the 10-yard line. The next closest, DeAndre Swift, with 6 inside the 10. So tell us why you like Pollard and why you're willing to pay up for him at 8K. A guy that probably should have gone in the first round everywhere and season long, but you used to be able to get him in the second. People are kind of eating that crow already. So tell us why you like him.
It really comes down to usage. It comes down to the matchup. It comes down to the fact that Arizona Cardinals is actually one of the worst defenses against the run, and that's not a surprise. They're going to be one of the worst defenses, period, this year. Whether you look at EPA, whatever you want, like whatever number you want to throw out there, PFF's got marked, like all the marks out there. It's actually a top 3 defense to allow against the run. So Tony Pollard at 8K. I know it's a little tough to stomach the 8K, but for the usage and in a week where you're looking across the running back landscape, and I know he's playing on Thursday anyway, but Saquon Barkley, that name's out, and now you're down. Christian McCaffrey. I wish I could have given you permission to play Christian McCaffrey this week, but that was the Thursday game. But like we're down Nick Chubb, unfortunately, and you just like now Aaron Jones is a question mark, and I'm like looking through this list, and I was like, I want this bell cow work, and for 8K, it's not too bad in what should be what we expect. This game could potentially be a repeat of week 1 of 40-0 kind of stomping. And you just mentioned he's getting all the goal line work, which was something we were a little bit concerned about. Like maybe they don't give it all to him, but this is Tony Pollard is inside the top 6 or 7, depending on what metrics you're looking at usage. That's the biggest thing. So even with the blowout and how easy things have been, to still have that kind of usage, I think Tony Pollard is. But you know what? I go back to Christian McCaffrey. Give him the Christian McCaffrey we expect. Give him the Christian McCaffrey. You're allowed to play Tony Pollard permission.
I like the Pollard call here a lot. And even McCarthy has talked about how his conditioning is just like off the charts, right? So anytime your coach says that about you, and we're kind of getting the opposite with Christian McCaffrey right now. They're like, yeah, we're using him a little bit too much. We want to get Elijah Mitchell more involved. It's like the opposite for Pollard right now. Like they like their team with him getting a ton of work, and they're getting a lot of short fields to work with too because of how good this defense is. So yeah, wheels up for Tony Pollard. I'll give an honorable mention here over to Joshua Kelly if Austin Eckler doesn't play. So 5,400 for him. I think he'll be the chalk. But if we're going to stay kind of in this more expensive range, which I think is the range we want to live in at running back this week, Travis Etienne 6,900 is another guy that sounds like you're super bullish on.
I am. Etienne, I love his usage so far too. There was some concerns about Etienne, but what happened last week is that the tank, Bigsby, nothing. Yep. Like, so like the big thing too is, oh, by the way, who are the Jaguars playing? Houston Texans. What did the Houston Texans just give up last week? Zach Moss. They just let Zach Moss run bananas. Like, and I'm looking at the fact that you're talking about Jacksonville and, you know, like the opportunity against the Houston's defense, which can't stop anything. And then they're going to be playing catch up, and the snaps, the pace that they run is because they're playing catch up and they're giving up turnovers. And this just is the ETN usage. But those holes that he just had, that being Zach Moss, had to run through. And now part of it was opened up by Anthony Richardson. We don't have to talk about that. But just if we talk about talent level of Zach Moss versus Travis Etienne, like there's not a world where anybody puts them on the same tiers. It's probably 2 tiers down. So if Zach Moss can do what he did against the Houston Texans defense, Travis Etienne at 69, if he can't get to Pollard at 8,000, looking through the list, you mentioned Joshua Kelly. I'd rather spend up. I think Joshua Kelly, this is good. I'm glad you brought him up. Let me pivot real quick and say this. If the ownership, you mentioned the flop lag, if it's down, then I'll be on Joshua Kelly. But if you remember last week, I was off Joshua Kelly because of being the chalk. I don't like him. I like him when he's not the chalk. So I will say, if he's chalk again, go to ETN. If not, then I think Kelly's in play.
Man, the problem with that is I think everyone that was like telling themselves not to play him last week because of the matchup, they're just
going to.
Now,
like me?
Yeah, they're the matchup people, right? So they're going to look and be like, "Oh, the Vikings,
like,
they
I
can't stop the
avoided it.
run." Yeah, now like I'm going to be right again. So dude, I think that the Kelly stuff, especially in small field, is going to get really steamed up if we don't see Austin Eckler. But again, if you're watching this later in the week and that's come out that Eckler's playing, everything changes there. So let's go ahead and move on to the tight end position. A guy that I was like, one of the prices I was the most interested to see was TJ Hockenson. He's 6,500. Great game environment. The usage is there. It's not down the field like we'd like to see, but he's a tight end. Let's get a tight end with volume, and he's been getting a ton of opportunities. So tell us why you like Hawk this week.
Everything you just said. It's the shootout opportunity. I wanted to give you normally we kind of focus on one tight end. I wanted to give a high price if you can get to it. Obviously, you know, with Pollard and Lamar Jackson and Keenan Allen, you're probably not getting Hockessin. But if you play enough around with the cheaper options, including any Josh Reynolds and stuff like that, then I think you can get Hockessin in your lineup. And it comes down to, he's been in the volume conversation of like a Mark Andrews and like even a Travis Kelce. He is, to go back to the Jordan Addison conversation. I know I said Jordan Addison's the number 2 or behind KJ Osborne is the number 2 wide receiver, but the number 2 option on this team is TJ Hockenson. And in this kind of environment, as you mentioned, this kind of opportunity, TJ Hockenson should smash. I know it's tough to swallow the 6,500, but if you're looking to not, somebody whose usage is third because Josh Reynolds is the number 2. But if you're looking to go down at 4,000, I think something's going to become common this year for you and me, Joe, is if Jared Goff is at home, I'm probably going to be talking up at least 2 or 3 of his guys. And at this point, Sam Laporta, if you've been like, I know we don't talk seasonal, but there's a conversation here to be had. Like Tyler Higbee, I expected to be the 2 or 3 for the Rams. That didn't happen. Moved on from him for an option like Laporta, who has been the 3. Marvin Jones, afterthought. He's at this point of his career is not surprising, but 4,000. If Jared Goff is going to throw 3 touchdowns, there's a good chance one of them might go to Laporta, and that's really the play here. I don't even care if he gets 50 yards. I'm just playing hopefully for the touchdown Laporta at home.
I like it. So before we build a lineup here, Jake, just want to remind people that there's a lot of news this year throughout the week, and a little bit less videos on the YouTube channel. What am I up to during the week? I'm mostly focused on building out my newsletter, the Touchdown Press. It's completely free, so make sure you guys check that out. There's a link in the description for that. Tons of news, tons of stuff from a season long perspective over there going out. So make sure you guys check that out. There's also a course, which I'm calling the DFS Masterclass. That's absolutely free in there as well. So kind of a free resource for you guys to get your feet set on DFS for the year. So make sure you guys check that out. Link in the description for that. Jake, you ready to build a lineup, my friend?
I am ready to do so.
If I could
get logged back into DraftKings, I'm trying right now.
Cool. Make sure
I forgot.
Make sure you
Normally, I already have it up, and then I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to do that this week.
Well, as you're logging back in, we skipped right over your defense. Dallas is 4,400. Are you willing to pay up for a defense this week and go all the way to the top? I don't know if most people are gonna be able to make it work in roster construction because the ownership is basically 0 right now. But man, this Dallas defense against the Cardinals is pretty enticing.
It is, and that's why I was good. I'm actually going to start when we do. That's what I wanted to do with their lineup. Right. See, this is why I'm saving it this year. You know, in the years past, usually I'm done. That's why I hadn't even logged back in yet. I want to build it with you. I want to start with the Cowboys defense just because it's going to be, if they continue to score 15 to 25 points, it's such a massive advantage. Even at 44, that's what you have to understand. Of course, the risk is that they just don't do anything, and you can hold the team scoreless and still not do much in fantasy because you don't get necessarily the turnovers. But Josh Dobbs even showed against the Giants last week that he'll take shots, he'll take risks, and I think this is a team to take advantage of it. So let's start with the Cowboys and see if we can make this work.
You better have some cheap guys for us, Henry.
Yeah, I think I was going to say the only way I think we can do this is if we do Reynolds, Goff, and Laporta and work from there.
I'm in for that. We got the Goff stack going.
That wasn't even one of my picks. I mean, if you're going to do Reynolds and Laporta,
yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
You have any interest on the other side, like some action on Atlanta here? Drake London?
For that, he's only 5,000 now because of the disappointment. Bring it back with Drake London. Yeah. If he was still higher than that, I'd be like, forget about it. But if we're going to play this route, I'll bring him back with that. So that leaves us about,
that helps.
I mean, that leaves us 64-75.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not bad. So where are we at running back? Do we want to try and get in Pollard to this team or ETN?
Let's put an ETN for now.
Okay. So we got ETN in there. I think we can probably still get Keenan in here if we wanted to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because it leaves us 57 and for a flex as well.
Yep.
All right, so where's Kelly at 54? I'm throwing Kelly and see what it gets. It gets us 6,000 at the flex, which gets us to Mark Andrews. You can do double tight end.
You could. Monster. I mean, you could just go Big Mike as
Mike Williams.
Yeah. So just attack all the Chargers guys with none of the Minnesota guys on this team. That's kind of an interesting route.
That's an interesting. Let's see this. Throw in Brian Robinson. Okay. I don't think is getting the respect that he deserves. Yeah, instead of Kelly as a pivot to this, and see where that brings us back at. Terry McLaurin, Buffalo, and I'm saying this because Buffalo's defense is I wouldn't really want to go Brian Robinson and Terry McLaurin, but look, there you go, boom, Jordan Addison.
I like it.
Goff, ETN, Brian Robinson, Reynolds, London, Allen, Laporta, Addison, Cowboys. I actually like this lineup.